All right, the Pyromaniacs are back, and we are talking about running backs this week. And Craig, you were just telling me, what were your feelings on running back in week one?
Oh, not too good. No matter who I put into a lineup, they seem to let me down. Except for Dalvin. Dalvin was all right, but running back was rough, man.
Running back was rough in week one, he says. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, notification bell, smash like on this video, and we will be back right after the intro.
Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
All right, we are back, and it is time to talk running backs week two. I do not disagree with your sentiment on running backs. Obviously, we saw. I just want to say that it was a very weird week one for running backs, right? I know you're really upset with Eckler because you're not a big fan and it didn't pan out. He was high owned in week one. I'm probably going back to the well in week two. Uh, but it was so weird because we saw like McCaffrey very limited in the passing game. Didn't have a lot of receptions. I think he had 3 or 4 targets. Eckler only one. CEH on Thursday night, no catches. And then we saw guys like Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack before his injury, which hurt me a lot. And Chris Carson with 2 receiving touchdowns,
Oh my
and
God.
like just all kinds of weird stuff. Right? We saw the guys that were supposed to catch passes not catch them. We seen Raheem Mostert have an 84-yard reception for a TD. And then our guys that we expect to have a bunch of receptions out of the backfield not have very many. So it was a frustrating week. Mine was more the Mac injury. Um, I had a lot of Mac and bringing it back with Shark, which Shark got the touchdown, but he only scored like 11 points or whatever. So it didn't kill me there. But when Mac was on a roll, like Mac was, I think he had like 8.5 points, like not even through the first quarter, and then blew that Achilles, and then we saw what Hines and Taylor combined to do. So that one really hurt. But yeah, I had a lot of the Dalvin. Adams secondary stacks. Didn't have any of the Aaron Rodgers stacks to go with Devontae Adams for the big paydays, but yeah, that paid off really really well. So looking at this board, we're gonna talk cash first. Did you have something else that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, only that it's frustrating, especially for our cash builds, right? Because I normally, you do too. You start with running back because it's supposed to be the position with the least variance. And then last week it was madness.
It was definitely madness, and the chalk didn't get there either, right? Like
No,
like
no.
I wrote up in my article like and I'm not gonna pat myself on the back because having Antonio Gibson in your lineup didn't lose you contests last week
Right.
because he was so high owned. Same thing with Boston Scott at 4,900. Having him in your lineup didn't lose you contests. I actually one of the really big contests. I think it was uh, the three max like $300. I go through and study these lineups and builds that these people are making, and they had Boston Scott and Antonio Gibson in their lineup, and still won because of what it gets you to, what else you can get in your lineup, right? And if it
Yeah.
got you to an extra Calvin Ridley and an extra whoever else that put up a big week, then it doesn't mean it's going to kill you when a lot of people own those players. So
Right.
so the mega chalk, the low dollar chalk didn't hit. The Austin Eckler chalk didn't hit, but uh, what that tells me for GPP this week is we might be going back to the well on some of these guys because other people are going to be off of them, and just because they didn't get there in week one doesn't mean that they're not going to be good plays in week two. But getting into this cash game build, is there a way you're looking at week two at running back? Because, like you said, we start with running backs, get as much volume in there as possible, and try to uh, you know what's the word I'm looking for? Try to get that floor as high as possible for your cash game build.
Yeah, and this week, I mean, let's just start with the chalk, assuming nothing changes. But Benny Snell, $4,500.
Yeah, Benny Snell's definitely going to be the chalk this week unless something else opens up. He actually didn't look terrible. Looked really good at times. 19 for 113 with that long of 30. The one thing that I normally don't like is that he only had one target here. Jalen Samuel's probably going to be the back that gets the targets there. But at 4,500, if he's going to get 20 carries in this game, we don't care as much about target and receiving floor, right? So he gets Denver, who made Derrick Henry look like a human
Yeah.
the other night. You know, Derrick Henry still put up his points, but it was not easy going for him. So this is again a spot where chalk might fail to live up to the hype, but for cash game builds, it's not going to lose you your cash game if you've got a 60% owned Benny Snell in your lineup.
No, not at all. And that's something that you in particular like to talk about a lot is you can't lose because of it, but you could not win. So,
Right. If he goes off and scores 28 and you don't have him in your lineup, that could just wreck your whole day. Um,
yeah.
and there might end up being other options in this area, right? I mean, you've got uh, James Robinson down here. I mean, I'm sure some people are going to be on him because he had 16 attempts in that game. He's going to get an opportunity. Um, who else here? Frank Gore. Um, with Le'Veon Bell out, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going. I don't want to go there. Frank Gore is going to be playing in the NFL in 2 years when his son's playing in the NFL. Um, but there's going to be some other people. Antonio Gibson's still down here at 4,300. I didn't like the volume here at only 11, but even if we think he's going to get 11 touches in week two, you got to think like if we're thinking somebody in the 8K range might get 20 touches, 11K for 4,300 isn't that bad, but I think I'm going to be on a more balanced approach this week at running back, and my first one is Ezekiel Elliott.
hmm
The usage here is just crazy. I mean, he was targeted 4 times, had 3 receptions, and then he had 22 carries and just missed that 100-yard bonus. That would have put him over 30 DraftKings points for the week. Um, we talk, there was like a 3-year stretch where we were like, start any running back against Atlanta because they can't. Then it was pass catchers. But Chris Carson, that might be back. Chris Carson just dumped in 2 touchdowns through the air on him. So I just love Zeke in this spot. The volume's there, the offense, the touchdown upside, and I'm probably going Zeke to start my cash game build this week.
I think Zeke is probably the strongest and safest option out of everybody. The usage is there. The matchup is so juicy. Dak loves him. Zeke is great. Right underneath him, and not a pass catcher, and I know that Denver made him look human, but Derrick Henry up against the Jaguars, that should be money in the bank all day too. Back
Yeah,
down to normal. I think an underrated part of playing in Denver this year is going to be you can't fly in until the day before, and so these teams that are going from near sea level all the way up to the elevation up there, um, I think it's really going to slow them down. So I think Derrick Henry bounces back and has a big game.
I do not hate Derrick Henry for my
Ooh,
cash game builds.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I don't hate him in GPP builds either. I do wish he had more, but he did get 3 targets in week one. And if we can get 3 to 4 out of him with his rushing volume, I feel a lot more comfortable putting him in my lineups on DraftKings, right? Like he's probably a smash cash game play on FanDuel. I haven't looked at pricing or whatever. I don't play over there, but yeah, just just 3 targets. That's 4.5 more points, right? That's what got him to 19. That's the difference maker there of a 116-yard day with no receptions being a 14.6 day and being a 19.1 day, which is a lot more palatable when you're talking cash game builds. So it, we obviously saw Jacksonville get carved up by the running back receiving the ball in week 1. Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack, and Jonathan Taylor all putting up points. I'm definitely not off of the Henry train for week 2. I wouldn't mind getting him and Zeke in the same lineup.
I know that'd be pretty sweet, and it's doable. It's definitely doable. You just have to find the value at some other positions and really use your flex to the fullest advantage. But can you imagine those two anchoring your cash games? Oh,
I mean,
awesome.
your floor there is about 50 touches between the two, right? Like
Yeah.
they're going to get 20 to 25 carries, and then if you can pop in, 6 to 8 receptions out of the two of them, you're sitting in a really good spot. And here's the thing that might make Benny Snell not chalk. Is this guy right here, Jonathan Taylor. With Marlon Mack out, Jonathan Taylor's only 5,700. We saw him get 9 attempts in week 1. They're going into Minnesota. The 9 attempts, he had 15 touches with the 6 receptions, put up 14.9 points. Wasn't efficient on the ground with his 2.4 yards per carry, 9 for 22. I don't think we're going to see that out of Jonathan Taylor very much in the running game. We might also not see 6 targets as often as we'd like, but I think with check down Phillip over there in Indy, we could definitely see 4 targets a week. That would be great. At 5,700 versus Minnesota, I think that Jonathan Taylor's very viable for cash games and any format, really. And if he gets more efficient, if he gets up to that 4.2, 4.5 yards per carry, we're looking at a guy that might have 90 yards rushing with a touchdown and maybe four targets for 35 yards, and we'd be real happy about that day. So I would love for some wide receiver value to open up this week and be able to plug Jonathan Taylor, Elliott, and Henry into my lineups and go with it. Is there anybody else here that you're looking at that could be potential cash game play for you? There's a couple more on the board that I see that are viable, but I mean, obviously Christian McCaffrey. Again, we said this in the quarterback video. Christian McCaffrey is always viable. I don't think you need him at 10K. It can hamper your lineup if you don't get the right value in there, but he is always a cash game viable play. Highest floor, ceiling as high as anybody. You get both combos there with him, but it just that's 1,600 between him and Barkley and 1,800 between him and Elliott that you can save and use elsewhere. But he is definitely viable if you want to throw him into your cash games. I'll just say that real quick.
Yeah, he's always great. I don't know if I love him against him. He's always great. Dalvin is always an option. I would go back to Eckler. I'm not scared of that. But that's really where the drop off is for me. You get down to the range where the Jonathan Taylor is, and I'm seeing David Montgomery. I don't trust that. Mark Ingram. I don't trust that. Le'Veon Bell's not playing. Ronald Jones. I don't trust that. There's no floor with any of these guys. So, either you're going to spend way down for the Benny Snells of the world, or you're going to spend up for Zeke and Henry and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'd run him out in cash, even though we saw a lot of usage out of all the backs. I think what we saw in week 1 out of him, that was promising for a rookie. So that mid tier, I don't see anything in the mid tier for cash that I like.
The only thing that I would say, and this is another player that I don't care about, I don't like that much, but Melvin Gordon, Didn't look bad in the first game, and if Phillip Lindsay is out, then I think that raises his floor. And at 5,200, I think he is a viable option. But Pittsburgh's also a pretty stout defense, so there is some risk there too. But I think he will be a great GPP play with Lindsay if Lindsay's out. Which let's see what this note says on Lindsay. Um, he is receiving a second opinion on his turf toe. So, well, that one will be a later in the week thought. Make sure you get in our Discord, rotoheat.com/Discord. We talk through this stuff all week. Always dropping different tips and tricks for your DFS lineups. So make sure you do that. And then also we talk redraft, dynasty, everything in there. So. Yeah, I second CEH. You can throw him in there. One balanced build might be Elliott, Hilaire, save that $500 might come in big as you're building your lineup, going from Henry to CEH. Chargers put some pressure. They get in the backfield. There might be more check downs for CEH in week 2. And then Austin Eckler again. If you would have told me Austin Eckler was going to rush for 84 yards and have 20 touches, I would have said he smashed.
Yeah.
I would have bet $500 on him that he smashed if you told me that bit. If you would have told me he had one target, I would have said there's no way. So it's one of those things. I know you were real frustrated about it because you've been off the Eckler train all off season, and then you smash him in there, and then he does what he did. But I still think that he's a very viable cash game option, and he's cheaper now. And the guy got 20 touches, and now he's cheaper. And if people are off him, that's going to be a great pivot. So we do have some running back options for cash games. Now, if we're switching this over to GPPs, who are you looking at first?
Big names aside, right? Because I think you can play Zeke in GPP. I would not mind playing Tony Pollard in a GPP. I think that there's going to be plenty of scoring going on in that game. And for $4,900, I could definitely see him catching a touchdown from old Dak. But the guy I really like is the guy that blew the game in Detroit last week. For $4,900, you can get Swift back in your lineup. They used him a ton. He was the only back targeted. Adrian Peterson is still there, right? He's never going away. He's like Frank Gore Jr., I guess. They're like redwood trees. They just never leave. But in his first game as a rookie, Detroit heavily targeted Swift. So I don't mind him for $4,900.
I will have zero of either of those guys.
Wow.
I would rather go back to Boston Scott at 5,000 if Miles Sanders is out. Really, even if Sanders is in, like, I don't hate Boston Scott, but I can't.
What's the latest on Sanders? Do you know? I haven't checked. Because I agree, if Sanders is out, Scott is like awesome.
Sanders says right now, he expects him to practice fully today on Wednesday, and then they will release their first practice report later today. This is Wednesday morning when we're recording at noon Eastern, so we'll know more on him. But yeah, I want guys that I feel are going to be factored into the game no matter what, and I just can't see either of those guys being heavily used. I'm going to start mine with Saquon Barkley versus Chicago because you just talked about Swift, and he dropped, he's targeted 5 times, he caught 3, but he had 2 terrible drops. The Bears have not been good at defending the running back out of the backfield, catching the ball. They might stuff the run up a little bit, but running backs can definitely catch the ball against Chicago, and Chicago's going to put pressure on the quarterback. So Barkley could be more heavily used in the passing game, which he had 9 targets, but he only caught 6 of them for 60 yards. I wouldn't be surprised if Saquon ended up with double-digit targets in this game, but he's not going to be held to that 15 for 6 yards that he was held to by the Steelers. Like, I felt terrible for Barkley watching him just get blown up, and I'll feel good if it happens this week, being a Bears fan, but I just don't see you holding. I mean, when you gave up how many yards to Peterson the week before, like, I don't think you're holding
93 or
Saquon.
something.
I don't think you're holding Saquon, so I love him for GPPs, and you can make some pretty interesting builds with Daniel Jones, or you can even do the secondary stack. I like to do a lot is running back, receiver, or even tight end, but I don't want to play any of the Bears tight ends, so I would go like Barkley and Miller or Barkley and Robinson as a secondary stack. I wouldn't hate.
I wouldn't hate it either. And this is for another video, but I'm taking Jimmy Graham again. Let's go. Maggie loves that guy for some reason.
You can have him. Okay, Aaron Jones for me. If Galladay doesn't go, there's going to be a lot of those Rodgers Adams stacks no matter what. But if Galladay doesn't go, I think Aaron Jones, and I heard this on another video, and I thought, wow, that I do like that. Is a good pivot, a good leverage play off of that Packers pass game. So those two were the first two that I was going to talk about. Who else sticks out to you?
Mostert does. I'm not usually a big fan of much of the 49ers offense. Not that they're a bad offense by any means, but we saw his explosive ability last week. Now he's going up against what may be the worst, most pitiful defense. Everyone assumed it would be the Jags, but the Jets, that team's bad, real bad.
Yeah.
So I don't mind Mostert at mid-range. Kenyon Drake, I know he's good, right? We objectively know that he's good, and he's in a high-scoring offense. There's just so much going on with Arizona that sometimes it's hard. This is why you can't, in my opinion, play Drake in cash this week, but I'd throw him in a GPP because he has that opportunity to get in the end zone, once or twice and rip off a couple giant plays.
Yeah, absolutely. I love him this week because he didn't explode in week 1, wasn't uber efficient playing against a good defense. Washington, their front seven's good, but I think he'll be more heavily used in the passing game. He only had 2 targets in week 1, and if he gets us 20 touches at that 6,000 price, I love it. 5,900 this week. There was one other guy that I wanted to mention. Where'd he go? J.K. Dobbins.
Okay.
J.K. Dobbins, while the 7 attempts doesn't look great, the 22 yards doesn't look great, he led this backfield in snaps in week 1. He had more than Mark Ingram. They both had more than Gus Edwards. But we thought that he was going to be worked in more than he actually was. There's so much touchdown upside. We see this. He had 7 carries, but he had 2 touchdowns. If he can get to 15 carries and a couple targets, which I don't think is crazy. I think they like him a lot. I think that Mark Ingram's playing the veteran that he played to Kamara in New Orleans. I don't hate J.K. Dobbins either.
No, I love him, actually. That offense is going to score points. They drafted him high. He's more explosive and more dynamic than Ingram or than anyone else on that roster, and he's still cheap. Perfect.
Okay, just a couple questions here. Do you have any interest in Joshua Kelly for the Chargers? We've seen him get 12 carries for 60 yards in week 1 with a touchdown. Do you have any interest going there?
Not particularly. I just think Eckler is going to make such a strong case for himself in a game where they're going to be playing from behind.
I agree. I think he's gonna have a little bit elevated ownership, so I would rather just fade there. Um, we were talking about Arizona, and Edmonds was actually used pretty heavily. He was targeted 5 times, had 6 carries. Do you have any interest in, you know, pivoting off of Drake, getting a little leverage on Drake owners with some Chase Edmonds?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for like large field GPPs or if you're multi-entering, that's a nice way to get different. We know we saw it last year. We're only one game into this year, but we saw it again. They're going to use him, and he's talented. I don't think many people are. The average player is not going to be scrolling through their DraftKings app and saying, "Ah, there's Chase Edmonds." Click.
Right.
Um, so I think that's a good way to get different.
Okay. I think. Miles Gaskins. Miles Gaskin. Um,
No.
GPP. Like I wouldn't think about.
Yeah,
I mean, basically Jordan Howard was terrible.
terrible.
he had Barkley like point 0.4 yards per carry or something, but he doesn't have like I don't know. I didn't watch the Miami game, so I don't know if he was getting blown up the same way as Barkley was. But Miles Gaskin came in and attempted 9 rushes for 40 yards, and then caught all 4 of his targets for 26. Um, I think he's another guy in that range where if you're looking for value, you could throw some Gaskin in, and hopefully he um, gets 15 to 15 carries and another 4 to 6 targets.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the appeal to that. I against Buffalo, I just don't see him. The sledding's not getting any easier this week for that Miami team, so I don't see the upside with him. But the price is great.
Right. That's just obviously just upside play. If he breaks when he seems to have more gas than anybody else in that
How
backfield.
about
Um, yeah, I mean, I Breda had way less usage, and people always thought Breda was a pass catcher. Like he's never really caught a lot of passes, and he had 0 targets in this game. Gaskin might be the guy that's first up there. In Miami, not that we like Miami running backs, but at that price, maybe worth a shot or two. Okay, that's running backs. Yeah, we it was juicy today. Um, all right, we're gonna be back with wide receivers. We want to thank everybody for watching. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, notification bell if you haven't done that yet. But I know you have. So we will see you in the next video. Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to.